Revelation chapter 12. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she being with child cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his hail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God, and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth, and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time, from the face of the serpent. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth, and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Revelation 12 is a chapter of the Bible that actually gets talked about a lot, and the great wonder in heaven. And that's not really what I'm going to focus this video on. I guess you could go watch videos on that if you want to, or you can go look into that. It's something that a lot of people talk about, and I think that, like, the event, allegedly, people claim that it somewhat recently happened with 12 stars, and then the sun on the clothes, and then the moon underneath them, and birthing a child. Something to do with Jupiter. I don't know. If that's your thing, that's cool. For me, that's not what I find the most helpful or interesting. In my opinion, that this stuff could have already happened. So I guess I'll talk about the great wonder in heaven with the 12 stars. I mean, things to me that are interesting about that stuff, it's probably like, okay, the 12 stars probably represent the 12 tribes of Israel. Things like that are what interests me. The fact of the 12 stars, and talking about what the number 12 often represents in the Bible. That's what I find most interesting. The red dragon, because here I'll just explain what I think about these Revelation 12 signs. In my opinion, these sound like things that have already happened. So when there's a bunch of videos of people talking about, oh, the Revelation 12 signs, they just happened in the sky. I don't know. How do you know that they didn't already happen? Because the way that I read Revelation, it's very not linear. So I understand the fact that in the later part of Revelation 12, it talks about the beast that comes out of the sea, multiple beasts in this chapter. But I don't think that necessarily means that happens right after the wonder in heaven with the 12 stars and the sun, the woman clothed with sun, and giving birth to a child. Because to me, it seems like that's talking about Jesus almost. So it's like the woman is kind of representing the unit of the 12 tribes of Israel together, and it's just kind of talking about how Satan and the third of the angels were fighting against God and were eventually thrown out of heaven and lost their estate. That's kind of what's getting talked about here, I believe, in Revelation 12. So, I mean, further reading is the book of Jude, which mentions the angels losing their first estate. Book of Enoch type ideas. Not that the book of Enoch hasn't been corrupted by this point, but just interesting things that come up in this chapter. Mentioning war in heaven, just a really interesting idea. I mean, when Satan finally decided to revolt, and with the angels, like actually trying to envision what a heavenly war would look like, is kind of like Michael. And so I don't know, does this come from the Bible, the title Archangel? You just hear people throw around the term Michael the Archangel. I don't know if that's like has a biblical foundation, but it does seem like Michael is a named angel with great importance. And Michael the angel gets talked about in this chapter, and a war, and also the gospel gets mentioned, how overcome by the blood of the Lamb. So I guess I just really appreciate how this chapter, it bridges a gap between Old Testament style prophecy and then also New Testament, the blood sacrifice of Jesus. So the book of Revelation, it does seem to me like it is bridging the gap between the old and the new. This chapter has a few really standalone verses, and the ones I wrote down in particular are when the devil, or Satan, and it mentions that he is the one who deceiveth the whole world. I mean, I also mentioned the fact that it talks about the devil and angels being involved in the fall. And also, I think it's really interesting when it talks about woe to the inhabitants, to the inhabitants of the earth, and the devil has great wrath because he's only here for a short time. Also, the mention of people who love not their life unto death is just another repeated idea in the Bible that I can relate to. So yeah, in my opinion, I think this stuff has all happened already, the Revelation 12 stuff. So there are videos out there, and there are people out there that are like, hey, the Revelation 12 signs just happened like a year ago. Okay, I don't know, maybe. I mean, maybe the same situation has happened before, but I think this whole chapter is basically one big storytelling of how Satan and the angels fell and torment the children of God. And I think that the mother who is going to give birth to the man child in this probably represents just the nation of Israel, and just thinking of women as the bloodline that carries through, and the women have the children, and how Satan and the angels that fell with him are all trying to get at God's children, and but it's finished. It's already finished because we're overcome by the blood of the Lamb. Even at the very end, when it mentions Satan chasing the women getting wings and going to a place, it all seems very parallel to the children of Israel being persecuted by the Egyptians and fleeing to the wilderness. And then, because it even mentions Satan trying to flood out the women, and that just reminds me of right, the parting of the Red Sea. And so I don't know. I guess one last thing to mention, just because it's been an ongoing investigation, I think the use of italics in Revelation chapter 12, verse 13, the fact that they put child in italics, that's something like added later, just the concept of the man child. I'm guessing that when they say like man child, they're making a reference to like baby Jesus, the fact that Jesus was born a woman. That's just a guess. But I think it's interesting that they went out of their way to add the child to the man in verse 13. There's another verse earlier in the chapter where man-child is used, but it's not italicized. So just something to look at. Hope you enjoyed this video. God bless everyone.